Self-Denial by George MacDonald. And he said unto all, If any man would come after me, let him deny himself, and take up his cross daily, and follow me. For whosoever would save his life shall lose it. But whosoever shall lose his life for my sake, the same shall save it. St. Luke, chapter 9, verses 23 and 24. Christ is the way out and the way in. The way from slavery, conscious or unconscious, into liberty. The way from the unhomeliness of things to the home we desire but do not know. The way from the stormy skirts of the Father's garments to the peace of his bosom. To picture him, we need not only endless figures, but sometimes quite opposing figures. He is not only the door of the sheepfold, but the shepherd of the sheep. He is not only the way, but the leader in the way, the rock that followed, and the captain of our salvation. We must become as little children, and Christ must be born in us. We must learn of him, and the one lesson he has to give is himself. He does first all he wants us to do. He is first all he wants us to be. We must not merely do as he did. We must see things as he saw them, regard them as he regarded them. We must take the will of God as the very life of our being. We must neither try to get our own way, nor trouble ourselves as to what may be thought or said of us. The world must be to us as nothing. I would not be misunderstood if I may avoid it. When I say the world, I do not mean the world God makes and means, yet less the human hearts that live therein, but the world man makes by choosing the perversion of his own nature, a world apart from and opposed to God's world. By the world, I mean all ways of judging, regarding, and thinking, whether political, economical, ecclesiastical, social, or individual, which are not divine, which are not God's ways of thinking, regarding, or judging, which do not take God into account, do not set his will supreme as the one only law of life, which do not care for the truth of things, but the customs of society, or the practice of the trade, which heed not what is right, but the usage of the time. From everything that is against the teaching and thinking of Jesus, from the world in the heart of the best man in it, especially from the world in his own heart, the disciple must turn to follow him. The first thing in all progress is to leave something behind. To follow him is to leave one's self behind. If any man would come after me, let him deny himself. Some seem to take this to mean that the disciple must go against his likings because they are his likings, must be unresponsive to the tendencies and directions and inclinations that are his, because they are such, and his. They seem to think something is gained by abstinence from what is pleasant, or by the doing of what is disagreeable, that to thwart the lower nature is in itself a good. Now, I will not dare say what a man may not get good from, if the thing be done in simplicity and honesty. I believe that when a man, for the sake of doing the thing that is right, does in mistake that which is not right, God will take care that he be shown the better way, will perhaps use the very thing which is his mistake to reveal to him the mistake it is. I will allow that the mere effort of will, arbitrary and uninformed of duty, partaking of the character of tyranny and even schism, may add to the man's power over his lower nature. But in that very nature it is God who must rule, and not the man, however well he may mean. For a man's rule of himself, in smallest opposition, however devout, to the law of his being, arises the huge danger of nourishing, by the pride of self-conquest, a far worse than even the unchained animal self, the demoniac self. True victory over self is the victory of God in the man, not of the man alone. It is not subjugation that is enough, but subjugation by God. And whatever man does without God, he must fail miserably, or succeed more miserably. No portion of a man can rule another portion, for God, not the man, created it, and the part is greater than the whole. In effecting what God does not mean, a man but falls into fresh ill conditions. In crossing his natural, therefore in themselves right inclinations, a man may develop a self-satisfaction which in its very nature is a root of all sin. Doing the thing God does not require of him, he puts himself in the place of God, becoming not a law, but a lawgiver to himself, one who commands, not one who obeys. The diseased satisfaction which some minds feel in laying burdens on themselves is a pampering, little as they may suspect it, of the most dangerous appetite of that self which they think they are mortifying. All the creatures of God are good, received with thanksgiving. Then only can any one of them become evil when it is used in relations in which a higher law forbids it, or when it is refused for the sake of self-discipline, in relations in which no higher law forbids it, and God therefore allows it. For a man to be his own schoolmaster is a right dangerous position. The pupil cannot be expected to make progress, except indeed in the wrong direction. To enjoy heartily and thankfully, and do cheerfully without, when God wills we should, is the way to live in regard to things of the lower nature. These must nowise be confounded with the things of the world. If any one say this is dangerous doctrine, I answer, the law of God is enough for me, and for laws invented by man, I will none of them. They are false, and come all of rebellion. God, and not man, is our judge. Verily, it is not to thwart or tease the poor self, Jesus tells us. That was not the purpose for which God gave it to us. He tells us we must leave it altogether, yield it, deny it, refuse it, lose it. Thus only shall we save it. Thus only have a share in our being. The self is given to us that we may sacrifice it. It is ours that we, like Christ, may have something to offer, not that we should torment it, but that we should deny it. Not that we should cross it, but that we should abandon it utterly. Then it can no more be vexed. What can this mean? We are not to thwart, but to abandon? How abandon without thwarting? It means this: we must refuse, abandon, deny self altogether as a ruling or determining or originating element in us. It is to be no longer the regent of our action. We are no more to think, what should I like to do? But, what would the living one have me do? It is not selfish to take that which God has made us to desire. Neither are we very good to yield it. We should only be very bad not to do so, when he would take it from us. But to yield it heartily, without a struggle or regret, is not merely to deny the self a thing it would like, but to deny the self itself, to refuse and abandon it. The self is God's making, only it must be the slave of Christ, that the Son may make it also the free son of the same Father. It must receive all from him, not as from nowhere. As well as the deeper soul, it must follow him, not its own desires. It must not be its own law. Christ must be its law. The time will come when it shall be so possessed, so enlarged, so idealized by the indwelling God who is its deeper, its deepest self, that there will be no longer any enforced denial of it needful. It has been finally denied and refused and sent into its own obedient place. It has learned to receive with thankfulness, to demand nothing, to turn no more upon its own center, or any more think to minister to its own good. God's eternal denial of himself, revealed in him who for our sakes in the flesh took up his cross daily, will have been developed in the man. His eternal rejoicing will be in God and in his fellows, before whom he will cast his glad self to be a carpet for their walk, a footstool for their rest, a stair for their climbing.